All right, let's get started. Hi, everyone. I'm Srinivasan, one of the co-founders and CEO of Spoke. Really appreciate you taking the time today. I was hoping to spend a little time telling you about Spoke, take you through the product, and also just talk about a few things that we're building out in the product in the near future. Don't worry about taking notes. We will send a video of this webinar after it ends. We'll send a note with the video as well. And please feel free to ask questions on the right sidebar. Would love to answer any questions that you have. I know several of the folks on the webinar are current customers of Spoke. And so first of all, thank you for being customers. And I'll make sure, especially for you, to make sure that we talk about some of the stuff that's coming soon in the Spoke platform. So with that, let's actually get started. I'm going to talk through around 5 or 6 slides and then jump right into the product. But at the end of the day, the reason we get up in the morning is to do this. What we're trying to do at Spoke is to figure out the best way for you to give your colleagues access to the knowledge and services they need to get their job done. How do you solve that problem is basically what we're trying to do. And there's been a sort of trend in the workplace over the last few years that actually makes solving this problem a little bit more challenging. And we refer to that as the on-demand workplace. If you think about it, over the last 5 years, you've moved from taking a taxi to probably using an Uber or Lyft. You might not always call a restaurant to order delivery anymore. You might just use an app. You might not go to a store or Amazon. You probably or a mall. You probably use something like Amazon. And so over the last 5 years, on the consumer side, we have been trained to use more and more what we call on-demand services. And it's really interesting because the expectation of on-demand delivery has now come to the workplace. And there's a common characteristic to most on-demand things. People are basically looking for a few things. One is convenience. 2 is, I need something and I need it in the most convenient way possible. 2 is immediacy. I want something now. And 3 is personalization. You should know who I am, you should know what my preferences are, and you should be able to deliver that. And so as we build Spoke, we keep in the back of our mind this notion of the on-demand workplace. And one of the challenges that we're trying to address is that your traditional ticketing systems, your traditional knowledge bases don't meet the expectations of your colleagues in the on-demand workplace. And when those tools fall short, it basically falls on you to be able to serve them well. Let me just dive into that a little bit more detail as I talk about the problems that we try to solve in Spoke. The things that get in the way of you assisting your colleagues in the most effective way possible right now, there are basically 3 or 4 of them. The first is this evolution to using chat apps as a hub within organizations. So, hey, I'm on Slack, I'm on Microsoft Teams, Skype, whatever. It's fantastic to be able to quickly ping my colleagues, get responses. But now that same sort of immediate, I ping someone and get a response, that expectation has come to IT ticketing or HR ticketing or ops ticketing. And so the first thing that we try to figure out is to say, look, if people expect immediacy and want to live on chat, how do you build a tool that addresses that? That's number 1. The second thing is how much more distributed companies are becoming across regions. Spoke is 30 people right now. Around 20 of us are in San Francisco, but we have 10 people across 4 other locations. And that's in a company with 30 people. I can only imagine sort of how complex it gets the larger your organization gets. So now you have distributed workforces in different regions. They have different needs and rules. The Wi-Fi password is probably different in different places, and the time zones are different. So again, as you're trying to provide excellent service delivery, or knowledge delivery, how do you address that? That's the second thing that we look at. The third thing that we look at is how knowledge and SaaS tools within your organizations has sort of exploded over the last 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years ago, there might have been one central wiki or one central shared folder with all the documents that you needed to get your job done. Now, you probably have something like a few hundred different SaaS tools and a proliferation of Google Docs, Office 365 docs, et cetera. So knowledge is no longer centralized. It is incredibly fragmented, and it's spread across a bunch of different tools, and there's a lot of tribal knowledge that you need to grapple with as well. And so when you couple chat apps, distributed workforces, and fragmented knowledge, what's happening is, in addition to not only having on-demand expectations, you also find that you're repeating yourself a lot. You're answering the same things over and over again, which basically takes away your time from working on more valuable things. And existing ticketing and project management tools are not built for this new reality. And that's essentially where Spoke comes in. So over the last two and a half years, as we've been building out Spoke, we basically focused on these three components. First and foremost, Spoke is a fast, modern ticketing system. The idea here is when someone needs something in an organization, they should be able to ask for help. And the way we've done that is to, one, build an extremely good, powerful, featureful ticketing system, but also make it usable by any team in a company. It's not just built for IT. It's not just built for DevOps. It's not just built for customer support. It's built for any function in a company. And we recognize that your colleagues want to ask for help wherever they are. So we have a best-in-class Slack integration. We obviously support email. We have a great web interface, and we also support SMS. So again, the first thing that we've built, the first part of Spoke, is a fast, modern ticketing system usable by anyone and accessible wherever your colleagues are doing work: Slack, email, SMS, and web. That's number one. The second problem that we wanted to tackle was the repetition. How do you essentially weave in machine learning and AI into a tool from the ground up? And the way that works in Spoke, we've done it in such a way that Spoke is essentially learning the answers to repetitive knowledge requests so that it's going to be able to handle that on its own. So you might respond to something once, but Spoke learns to handle that and will take care of it for you in the future. And it's not just about knowledge. Spoke also learns who to send service requests to and what information you need as you serve those folks. So essentially, we have a knowledge base that's integrated into our ticketing system in such a way that it's learning either the answers to simple issues or figuring out how to triage the more complex issues and who to send it to. That's the second part of Spoke. And then the third part of Spoke is how we've built it to enable cross-team collaboration. One of the cool things about Spoke is that since it's usable by anyone in a company and everyone in the company is on Spoke, you can very, very effectively collaborate with your colleagues in different functions. So for example, if you're in IT, but you need HR to do something or finance to do something, you don't have to have a separate workflow for that. Within Spoke, just like you would collaborate with one of your colleagues in IT, you can do that with other teams as well. In addition, we have an incredibly robust API, and we are one of the only internal ticketing systems that integrates with your HRIS. So when someone asks you a question, you know exactly who they are because that information has been pulled in from the HRIS. And we're able to provide a personalized answer back to people because, again, we know who they are. So that's the sort of quick overview of the components of Spoke. The last slide before I jump into the demo itself is sort of the core flow of Spoke that I'm going to be walking you through. So let's imagine someone in your organization has a question or a service request. Where can I see my pay stubs? The first thing is they can go ask for help wherever they are. That could be Slack, email, SMS, or web. So whatever's convenient to them, they go to Spoke and ask for help. And one of two things is going to happen. Spoke is going to know the answer, and it's going to respond without any human intervention immediately. So Spoke knows the answer to this question. It's going to respond. The person asking the question got what they needed. Or it's going to realize that it's a service request or a human needs to get involved. It's going to assign the request to the right person in your company and provide them with as much context as possible to respond. And the idea here is, as you use Spoke, as you respond to things, Spoke gets smarter and smarter over time. So with that, let me actually dive into a very, very quick demo of Spoke. And one of the best ways to start seeing how Spoke works is actually from Slack. So I'm going to go to our company Slack now, and you'll see that Spoke shows up in the sidebar as a bot or a colleague. Now, one of the things I always like to point out, you can rename Spoke to whatever you want in your company. You can call it IT help. You can call it help. Now, the idea here is when you go to Spoke, when you need something, you can go to Spoke and ask a question just like you would a colleague. So, for example, let me start with a very basic question. Let's say something like, what's the guest Wi-Fi password? Now, this in itself isn't a particularly complex question, but here's the thing. Just like I talked to a colleague, I went to Spoke, Spoke responded, and it gave me an answer. Now, if you're visiting our offices in San Francisco, just ask Spoke is the password to our guest Wi-Fi network. If I were to say yes, that closes out the interaction. Fantastic. Now, let me do a second, and I said yes, and you can see that close out. Now, let me start a second request, and I'll explain sort of what this my monitor is broken thing is in a second. But let me show you a second example now, which is a little bit more complex. What if I were to go to Spoke later in the day and say something like, hey, I have some really good news. I just had a baby. How do I add her to my insurance? Now, when I asked the guest Wi-Fi password, Spoke responded immediately and helped me out. Let's see what it does in this case. I just had a baby. How do I add her to my insurance? Again, Spoke has responded immediately. But the first thing I want to point out is that Spoke responded as the people ops team and not the IT team. So one of the things that I will show you in the tool itself is how you can have multiple teams in your company supporting Spoke, supporting your end users through Spoke. And so in this case, IT responded. In this case, the people ops team responded. Now, one of the cool things about treating knowledge, handling knowledge in the modern workplace is that answers aren't always just going to be simple text answers. Sometimes the best answer to a question is a link. So for example, in this case, the response to this question is actually a link to something called a qualifying life event benefits change. If I were to click on the link, it would take us to Gusto, which is the system that we use at our organization to manage payroll and benefits. And if I were to log into Gusto, Spoke is actually going to drop me on the page where I can change my benefits because I've had a child. So again, this is the exact right answer to this question, and I'm going to say, yes, that helped. Now, I like showing these two examples initially just to get the ball rolling because it highlights three things about Spoke. The first point, as I made, both IT and the HR team, the people ops team, responded to me through a single interface. I didn't have to go to a different place for each thing. Two, in one case, the best answer was a simple text entry. In this case, the best answer was a link. Spoke also supports files. Spoke also integrates with Confluence and Google Docs. So wherever the right answer is in your organization, Spoke will try to return that. And then the third reason I like this example is actually where our machine learning comes in. Look at this question that I asked. I just had a baby. How do I add her to my insurance? Now, if I have never gone through a qualifying life event benefits change process before, I probably don't even know what that phrase means. All I know is to ask, how do I add my baby to my insurance? In the case of Spoke, the first time someone asked this question, Spoke might not have known the answer, but it would have sent the request to the people ops team. When they responded, they taught Spoke that actually what this person's looking for is the qualifying life event benefit change. So this is the sort of crux of the machine learning of Spoke, where Spoke forms an association between how your colleagues ask for information and what the right answer is. So now it's not always about knowledge requests. It can also be about service requests. So for example, if I were to go to Spoke again and say something like, hey, I have a question, or I need a new laptop. In this case, when I say I need a new laptop, Spoke knows not to respond with a knowledge response, right? It knows that the right answer is actually a service request. So it asks me whether it should file a request on my behalf. I'm going to say yes. And here's the cool thing. Spoke knows to send this request to the IT team. It's automatically assigned it to Mike Tyson in the IT team. It also knows that the IT team probably has a few questions for me. So I'm going to answer these questions. A MacBook Pro 13-inch. When do I need this? ASAP. Where's the, I want it in the office. Now, not only have I answered this request, I can also then return the broken hardware, mark it as complete, etc. So what I'm showing you here is Spoke is not, the bot in Slack is not just responding to simple knowledge requests. It's also recognizing when something is a service request. In that case, trying to collect the information. And then I get into the ticketing system itself, I'll show you how the person who asked, who's assigned this ticket will actually have all of this context in the ticket for them. Now, before I get into the ticketing system itself, I just want to point out a few other things about our Slack integration. We take our Slack integration extremely seriously because a vast majority of our customers are on Slack or intend to be on Slack soon. And there are many, many different ways in which your colleagues interact with you in Slack. So for example, my colleague James has sent me 2 questions here. He basically said, hey, the screen on my laptop is cracked. I can't get it to turn on, and he wants to know the guest Wi-Fi password. Now, in a normal situation, you go to lunch and you come back and like 17 people have pinged you in direct messages. You need to figure out how to handle all of them. One of the cool things about Spoke, when someone pings you directly, you can literally click these 3 dots on the right and just say Ask Spoke. And here's the thing. Spoke knows that this is a simple knowledge request. I'm going to say that helps. Spoke is going to send that answer back to James. So I didn't have to file a ticket. Spoke knew the answer. I threw it back to him even though he direct messaged me. Similarly, this other request that he asked me, the screen cracked on my laptop and I can't get it to turn on. Again, I can click these three dots. I can say, ask Spoke. And again, Spoke knows that it's a broken hardware request, so it's not trying to give a knowledge response. It's going to file the request. It's going to assign it to me because he sent it to me, and he's going to be the person who created the request. What I'm showing you here is Spoke is not just a bot on Slack. It also recognizes that people ping you directly, and with app actions, we then figure out whether it's a knowledge request or a service request and throw it into Spoke. Similarly, you can talk to Spoke in a public channel. You can use slash commands. So for example, I can go to Spoke and say /Spoke file a request. Now, or whatever, and it'll create this request. My point here is many, many different ways in which people ping you. Sometimes they walk by your desk, sometimes they direct message you. In all these situations, Spoke is capturing those requests and throwing them into Slack. Capturing those requests in Slack and throwing them into Spoke. Okay, now let's actually get into the ticketing system itself. So this is the Spoke web app. Now, you'll see that all of these requests that I've been going through excuse me, are showing up in the product. What's the guest Wi-Fi password and I just had a baby? These were automatically handled by Spoke. So even when Spoke automatically helps someone else, Spoke is actually capturing that information and closing the ticket out, but still logging the ticket. So one, you get credit for it, but two, you're also able to see what other interactions people have had. I need a new laptop request and the screen cracked on my laptop, I can't get it to turn on. These are both requests that should be handled by the appropriate team, and so Spoke is going to send those to those will be handled by folks. Now, before I actually spend more time on the tickets themselves, I want to show you two things on the left nav bar here, the knowledge base and teams. So at the end of the day, if Spoke knows the answer to a question, that answer resides somewhere in Spoke's knowledge base. And the key to Spoke's knowledge base is that we don't want you to spend a single second actually maintaining the information in the knowledge base. Knowledge bases very, very quickly get out of date, and it is frankly, almost a fool's errand to try to actually stitch a central knowledge base across the modern workplace. And so Spoke's approach is throw knowledge into Spoke. Spoke through search will find the right answer for you. There are two ways to add content to Spoke's knowledge base. The first is directly. If someone asks you a question, you're able to say, you can respond to that request, and then you can throw that knowledge into Spoke. Or anytime you want, you can click the plus button here. You can add text, links, files, or import documents directly from Google Docs into the Spoke knowledge base. Let me just click on the creating a text entry for a second. You can format great articles or add links to things. If you want to be reminded to review something at some point, you can actually set a reminder. So, hey, every 3 months I want to go update the Wi-Fi password. You can set that and do it. And then an incredibly powerful feature that only Spoke has, you can actually choose who the resource that you're creating the knowledge base is for. So you can say, look, everyone at Spoke should get this answer. Or you can actually create custom segments from, like, only managers should see this response. Only IT team members should see this response. Only people in the San Francisco office or the New York office should see this response. All of these are configurable. And this is incredibly powerful because in Spoke's knowledge base, you can actually curate who is going to get what answer. So someone asking for something in one office is not going to get a useless answer, which is actually right for another office.
Maximize your screen, sir. Can you maximize your screen, sir?
Yes. All right. So now let's get into the so that's the knowledge base. The other part of Spoke that I want to talk about is teams. At the end of the day, when Spoke doesn't know an answer, it needs to know who to send that request to. And that is the concept of teams in Spoke. Unlike a sort of traditional ticketing system where each team needs to set up their own separate ticketing system, Spoke allows you to have a single pane of glass where you can have as many of your colleagues in different teams on Spoke at once. This is our demo instance. These are the teams that you see here. For example, if I were to click on the IT team, you'll see that these are the folks in the IT team that will get IT requests. Spoke automatically curates the most popular resources associated with them. We allow you to automatically classify incoming requests into different categories. And Spoke is learning and will start doing this for you automatically. So for example, when there's a broken hardware request, I'm actually able to say, look, these are the questions that I want answered. And then I can even have tasks that are automatically triggered when a request comes in. Similarly, we have a bunch of configurability around how tickets are assigned. So for example, you can actually change assignment rules. You can do round robin, send all tickets to one person, or exclude certain people. You can set SLAs and reminders. All of these are configured on a team-by-team basis, but each team can be independent and flexible on their own, and the end users don't have to worry about any of this. They're contacting Spoke through Slack. They're contacting Spoke through email. They're sending a text to Spoke's phone number, which is in the bottom left corner, or they're actually using this web search bar on top. And Spoke will automatically figure out which team to send it to, and the team can manage their own personal settings. Now, let's actually get into ticket management itself. So in this case, James sent this request. Now, I want to show you a few different things here. So first of all, we've tried to make this interface intuitive to anyone in an organization. You'll see that this is the chat that I'm having with, this is the chat so far with James. I can say, what type of laptop do you have? Or something like this. And now James is going to get a response, but the cool thing is this will actually be synced to a thread in Slack. In addition to getting an email, if he wants, he can also have Spoke automatically respond in Slack in the form of a thread. And that's one of the cool things about how Spoke's web app and Slack stay synced. A thread in Slack is the entire conversation history in a Spoke ticket. So I can respond back to James. Now, I can also see who James is, where he sits. So for example, if I were to go look at requester here, this information is actually pulled in from our HRIS system. And so James hasn't filled out his HRIS information, but for example, if I were to go to Michael, another ticket, I'll say, hey, who's this Michael? I'll actually see that Michael's our head of BD and partnerships. I'm his manager. He's based in San Francisco. He's from the sales and marketing team, and he started 10 months ago. All of this information is automatically populated in the ticket for you so that you don't have to go pull up your directory, figure out where you need to send information. That context is provided in the ticket for you. Now, by the way, James just responded, and you'll actually see that he responded via Slack. So he doesn't have to log into the web app or send an email back. He literally got a ping in Slack, and he responded back. Now, if James had filled out this information, you will see that information being populated here. So for example, I need a new laptop. In this case, all the questions were automatically populated in the ticket based on what the user asked. And then Spoke automatically creates a bunch of tasks that are assigned to the appropriate people. And once they start, in this case, since I'm Mike's manager, I took care of 2 of these things, etc. Spoke automatically will update the tasks in the ticket. All of this is kept in one place. 1 or 2 other quick things that I want to show you on the ticket interface itself. You can see that Spoke automatically assigned this ticket to someone in the IT team and automatically classified the request type as well. So in some cases, Spoke knows how to do all of that. When it doesn't know how to do something, you can actually change these toggles, and Spoke is learning in the background to automatically do it for you in the future. Similarly, if I want to have a private conversation among just the IT team, I can click this little icon here. I can say, are we allowed to give you laptops or just loaners? And Spoke will automatically respond. This conversation will stay restricted to just the IT folks. Once I'm ready to respond back to the person asking the question, I can turn it off. The last thing I want to show you in the ticket interface itself is how Spoke learns. So let's go back to Slack for a second. I'm going to ask Spoke a question that I think should be repetitive. So for example, I'm going to make a question up now. What brand of sparkling water do we offer in the office? Now, I go to Spoke and ask this question. Spoke has never seen this question before. It doesn't know what to do. So what it's going to do is say, yeah, I'm going to say, yes, file a request. Here's the thing. This request has now come into Spoke, and it's going to get triaged. So someone's going to pick up this ticket, and hey, folks, I'm back. Sorry about that. I clearly have not used the software before, and so in closing out my browser window, I actually turned off the screen sharing. So anyway, this question around what brand of sparkling water do we offer in the office, the first time Spoke saw this question, it didn't know what to do with it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to file this request under the Office admin team. Now, the Office admin team has got this request, and it's been assigned to Jason Bourne there. Now, by the way, here's the cool thing, right? So I assigned this request to the Office admin team, if I were to go back to Spoke and ask a similar question, you'll see that Spoke already knows to send this to the office admin team. So literally by triaging this ticket once, Spoke has figured out which team to send this request to. Now, in this case, it's been assigned to Emily and the office admin team. So now let's say Emily and or Jason answered this question. They're basically going to say, we offer LaCroix. Okay, so now they've responded to this request. But if you think this question is going to come up again and you don't want to have to answer it again, you can literally click these 3 dots here. You can add this to Spoke's knowledge base and say sparkling water in the office. You can change the review date and audience, but let's literally just keep this one simple. So now, not only have I answered this question once, but this answer is now in the knowledge base. And by the way, this is the power of how we've structured our knowledge base. You'd never go create a Confluence article for just this snippet of information. Versus in Spoke, it can be a snippet in a pile and Spoke will search for the right answer. So the next time someone were to say, what brand of sparkling water or something similar, Spoke is going to be able to automatically answer for you in the future. And I will say yes. Great. So that's the very, very quick demo of Spoke. What I haven't shown you is how to use the web interface. I haven't shown you email, but Spoke works exactly the same way on email as it does on Slack, where you can file requests just to your normal mailing lists, or you can send a request to Spoke by email. Spoke will triage the ticket and then will automatically respond by email if it knows the answer. Now, I'm going to start answering some of the questions that have come in, and then I'll get back to the slide deck as well. All right, so let's see. The first question, will this demo recording be made available to attendees? Absolutely, with all the snafus. So you'll see the thing cutting off and coming back on. But yes, we will absolutely send this in the form of an email, and then we'll send the deck as well. We'll send the deck as well as the video. How long does it take roughly to create your knowledge base? This question's from Regina. So the thing about Spoke's knowledge base is that what we found is you don't want to spend too much time actually uploading a bunch of content into Spoke's knowledge base on day one. Instead, the best approach is literally to spend maybe half a day pulling the existing content that you already have, the common questions that you know are going to come, maybe create 10 or 20 answers in Spoke's knowledge base on day one. After that, the power of Spoke is that as you're actually responding to requests, so here, as I'm actually responding to requests, these tickets have come in, I respond to the ticket, and then I click these 3 dots and I'm throwing it into the knowledge base. So typically, the knowledge base gets really, really effective within a month or so, but it's not because you're spending a month collecting information. It's because you probably spent half a day putting some knowledge into Spoke on day one, and the rest of the time, you're answering questions for the last time, because as you handle the ticket, you're telling Spoke to remember the answer for you. Now, I'm going to go back to the deck in a second and talk very, very briefly about our customer success team, but one of the things that our customer success team is excellent at is actually guiding you through that process. All right, next question. I'm a current Spoke customer. When do the task feature go live? So Mike, thank you so much for being a current Spoke customer. Tasks, we're super excited about it. What I showed you is actually the beta that is turned on for our demo instance, as well as 1 or 2 beta customers. We are shooting to have tasks go live in the next few weeks. And Susan and Rochelle and the customer success team will be following up with you individually to actually take you through that. Next question, does Spoke integrate with most all HRIS systems? Great question. So here, our approach to so in our settings tab, you can actually see the HRIS tools that we support. And the quick answer is we support them all, because if we don't have a direct API sync, which is with Bamboo and Namely, all the other tools, you can actually set up a CSV import where once a day or at whatever frequency is appropriate, once a week, we will help you set up an export of CSV with this information from the HRIS, and then that's sucked into Spoke. And this is actually an incredibly powerful feature. This is without you having to do anything other than taking your HRIS CSV. You suddenly have context for every single ticket. So yes, quick answer, we support all HRIS systems. If it's not a direct integration, it's through the CSV upload. Next question. We have an internal wiki made with Google Sites. If we add on the knowledge base, the internal link to a page, will any updates made on our wiki automatically sync with the KV? Oh, this is a fantastic question. So what happens when I have an external, so paraphrasing this question, if I were to link to content that is outside of Spoke, will Spoke stay up to date with the content being refreshed in that other spot? So there are essentially two ways to handle this. If you were to store the Google Sites answers as links in Spoke, so you go to Spoke's knowledge base, and instead of adding text entries, what you can do is you can create a link to the specific spot in your Google site and have a brief description of what that spot is. So for example, company handbook, and then here's the link on the Google site. In that case, there's no need for Spoke to automatically crawl your Google site and know that it's updated. As long as the link is maintained, you can constantly keep the information on that website updated, and Spoke is only dropping people at that link. This is also, by the way, a great privacy feature where if you want to restrict access to just a few people in your company to a document, you just store the link in Spoke to the document, and then that the document can be refreshed, and Spoke just remembers the link. So that's one thing. The other thing is with Google Docs specifically, Spoke has a live sync integration. So what we allow you to do right now in Google Docs is you can import a document into Spoke, and then you can tell Spoke to stay synced with that document. In which case, Spoke is constantly updated on any changes to that Google Doc. It will identify content within the Google Doc and then stay synced. The next sync that we're working on is Confluence, and over time we'll be adding more and more knowledge bases where we stay live synced with. But right now, if it's not a Google Doc, the best way to refresh content and not have stale data in Spoke is to store it as a link. Okay, can the email address be added in CC on the email response Spoke sent to an employee? Yes. So that's one of the cool things about Spoke. I didn't show this to you in the ticket flow itself, but let's say I'm working on a ticket and I want a colleague to help me out. What I would do in Slack is to @mention them, and I can do the exact same thing in Spoke as well. I can say, Mike, do you know the answer? And what happens in that scenario is that Mike gets added as a follower on this ticket, and then Spoke notifies them. The exact same concept applies through email CCs as well. If you were to CC someone or CC Spoke, Spoke would create the ticket, and then everyone else CC'd on it would become followers on the ticket. Okay, how do you make sure, the next question is, how do you make sure knowledge base articles are up to date? Again, great question. So there are essentially 2 or 3 different layers in which we address this. The first very manual thing that you do is when you create a knowledge base entry, you can click the plus button, and as I showed you, you can set a review date. So first of all, you can set your own reminder to check on a knowledge base article every so often. That's number one. The second thing is within any knowledge base entry, we allow you to flag something for review. So if you think something is inaccurate, you can actually flag it. Spoke will then say, what about Crystal Springs? Right? So Spoke will then send a note to the person who created the request saying, hey, they think the answer might not be accurate. And then Spoke will actually flag the article as something that needs review and will warn the person responding who's getting the automatic response that this article might be inaccurate. So that's the second thing that we do. The third thing that we do, and this is actually the power of having ticketing and knowledge integrated. If I were to ask Spoke a question like, what's the guest Wi-Fi password? And let's say the guest Wi-Fi password's been updated. I try this password out, it doesn't work. When I say no, what Spoke does is it creates a request with the IT team, and that request will actually have the wrong answer in it. So not only will the IT team be able to respond to this person, quickly ping them on Slack, etc., but they now know that this answer needs to be updated. So we essentially have multiple layers at which we handle data accuracy. One of the things in our roadmap from a machine learning perspective is actually to also automatically suggest when we think something's outdated, but that's in the future. Okay, next question. Does Spoke provide metrics like types of requests, how many tasks per week, months, SLAs, etc.? Absolutely. So we recognize the importance of metrics in the ticketing system. And there are basically 3 ways in which we provide actionable metrics to you. First is in the product itself. So I'm showing you a sort of simple dashboard example here, but SLAs, response times, who's sending you the questions, volume, how many of them are auto-resolved, which teams are getting responses. All of the information that you need is in the product in a live dashboard. And when it's not, one of the powers of this is we don't actually, we use a separate tool called Mode Analytics to actually create these dashboards. And the reason we do that is that we allow you, unlike any other ticketing system, to actually customize the dashboard. So if, hey, here are the 7 things that we care about, but my company in particular cares about metrics 8 and 9, we are actually able to provide you with a link to your own unique dashboard, which has that information in it. And so if I were to, I don't want to go through the whole login process right now, but the quick answer is we give you live metrics, plus we allow you to customize them to the ones that are relevant to you. That's number 1. Number 2, we're not wedded to locking in our data. And so at any point in time, you're actually able to export all of your ticket information. And a really powerful thing is we actually include things like the request type. So we'll automatically tell you, hey, this is the volume of tickets in each of these different categories. Here's who's sending the requests. Are they coming through Slack, email, first response time, were the requests auto-resolved? All that information we provide to you as raw data whenever you want as well. And then finally, one of the things I will talk about briefly is how our customer success team helps you out. And after your trial, we provide you a monthly report on knowledge base articles that you should create. And we do quarterly health checks with metrics as well. So live metrics in the product, exportable data at any point in time, and a customer success team that believes in the value of metrics and takes you through it. All right, next question. How is Spoke different from other chatbots and knowledge-based systems like Zendesk? It's a great question. So the first point I want to make, I actually want to start with the chatbot phrase. The Slack chatbot is one of the ways to talk to Spoke. Spoke in itself is a very large, powerful product, which is a ticketing system and a knowledge base with machine learning. One of the ways in which people prefer to interact with Spoke is self-service through Slack, and that's where the chatbot works out. So when you see chatbot companies that basically have a sort of simple knowledge-based chatbot or a simple ticketing integration chatbot, that is Spoke does that, but only as a way to talk to Spoke. Now, as we take a broader perspective around how does Spoke compare to other ticketing systems, first of all, I'm biased. I think ours is better, but I'll explain sort of why. We are the only ticketing system built explicitly for internal use by every team in the company. We're not a customer support tool that is also being used for internal support. So that's why we care, for example, more about an HRIS integration than a CRM integration. And we're not only an IT and DevOps tool. We provide you the capabilities that you need as an IT or DevOps team, but we also don't want to overwhelm other functions in the company that don't need all the specific features that IT and DevOps need. So Spoke is essentially, at the end of the day, the only system that has been express built for internal use across multiple teams. If I were to talk about the unique aspects of Spoke, I always come back to the same 3 things. The single most accessible, easy to use system. For example, how the entire Slack integration, we put a lot of care into building that out. So it is the easiest to use tool by end users as well as agents. We're the only system with machine learning built in from the ground up. And I'll take you through some of our numbers, but we auto-resolve up to 50% of requests. We triage the rest. And then the third thing is we're the only tool that's built for cross-team collaboration and workflows. Can you explain the tasks feature? Certainly. So in request type, so you can, what Spoke allows you to do is automatically tell Spoke to classify different requests with different, as different types of, automatically classify the different types of requests that are coming in. So you can literally click the plus button and say, I'm going to add a new request type or pull a request type from a, for example, a software error or bug, and then Spoke will automatically now start figuring out which tickets are software errors and bugs and classifying them for you. Now, that is the type of request, but we have 2 sort of sub features in there. One, when certain types of requests actually require you to get further information from the end user. And so Spoke has questions that show up in a form in email or the web interface or in Slack. And then there are also tasks that you want to associate with certain request types. And what Spoke allows you to do is essentially add a bunch of tasks and then figure out intelligently who those tasks should be assigned to. And you're tracking all of those in one place. So tasks, I'm going to talk, I'm now jumping around a little, but let me quickly show you our roadmap. Tasks are the first part. So tasks and approvals are the first part of workflows. Once you have tasks and you have the ability to have work approvals in the product, we then get to actually do sequenced workflows. So for example, if you're onboarding someone, Spoke will automatically generate the 30 tasks across the 5 different teams in your company. Assign those tasks to everyone, make sure they're going to the right folks. And here's the cool thing. If you remember early on in the demo, Mike said he needs a, here it is. So Mike said his monitor is broken. As his manager, I actually got a approved replacement hardware task in Slack. Now, check out the power of that. As I might not be living in the ticketing system every day, and we recognize that. So if I really need to mark something as complete, I just got a ping on Slack. I click that, and then that ticket is updated. And so that is basically where we're going with tasks. Let me go back to the other questions. Just admins have access to a Spoke account, or do all employees have some sort of dashboard with all their requests? Everyone has access to the Spoke web app. We restrict who can see what. So any end user will be able to see inbox where they see the requests that they've been sent, and they can see the status of all their requests in the sent tab. So they can see the open request, they're waiting for a response. They can see done. And then of course, they have access to the knowledge base as well. As an admin, I'm showing you all the bells and whistles in the product, but end users can see the status of their requests and go through the knowledge base themselves as well. A question about whether we can use Spoke for external ticketing. Quick answer is no. You can't use it for customer support, and I'll explain why. We don't want Spoke to automatically respond with an answer to, so if Spoke needs, let me rephrase this. Spoke needs to know who is asking it a question. And that's why we have SAML, we have Skim, we have a Slack. You can stay synced through Slack, you can stay synced through Google SSO, whatever. But Spoke needs to know who's actually making a request. Because I don't want me, for example, to email the Spoke address of one of my customers and for me to get an internal answer back automatically, which is why we've express built Spoke only for internal use, because it needs to know who's asking it questions. And I guess the next question then is, how do you make sure Spoke replies only to employees and not to external people? That's a great question. It's the same answer as Spoke needs to know who's asking a question. So when you use Spoke, you tell it who is allowed to access it. By the way, if you don't remember everyone who's allowed to access it, that's okay. When someone Spoke doesn't recognize pings you, Spoke will ask you, can I create a ticket or respond to this person? And then you can approve them on the fly as well. So 70% of your employees do not have a company's email address. We're not wedded to, for example, just your company domain. You can actually have whatever different email addresses, as long as that email address or some way of identifying a customer like SSO and Skim, an end user like SSO and Skim is available, you're able to answer it. Is Spoke integrated into Okta? Absolutely, both SAML and Skim. Can Spoke be white labeled and apply to all functions and not just IT and HR? So quick answer here. We don't allow white labeling yet. We have a few ways to sort of reconfigure how Spoke looks in terms of the sidebar color, the logo, etc. But it's not white labelable yet. Can you use it not just for IT and HR? 100%. And so one of the things I always like showing in any of the demos that I do, and so I don't see why I shouldn't do it in our live webinar as well, is actually showing our own internal Spoke at Spoke. And if you go to our internal Spoke at Spoke, you'll see the different teams that are actually on Spoke. We use it for our New York office, InfoSec, analytics, product team, customer success team, sales, IT. All of these different teams use Spoke. And if you actually go through our knowledge base, you'll see that all of the different answers, so engineering has something, design has something, and if you look at our tickets, all of the different teams in the company are on that as well. So we don't white label, but Spoke is very much meant to be used by everyone in the company. Now, we're almost out of time. Oh, would you recommend Spoke for engineering teams? Yes, it depends on the function. If it's for bug tracking, if it's for issue management. So for example, let me give you the answer to that. At Spoke, internally, our engineering team uses GitHub. And that's how we manage our sprints. That's how we manage our bugs. That's how we manage our tasks. However, if I were to go look at, show you our internal Spoke's engineering team, let's see what's actually in it. You'll see that a bunch of readmes, how to do on call, our release process, all of that knowledge resides in Spoke. And then any ticket where you're actually, so let's just look at engineering tickets in Spoke, in our internal Spoke. You'll see that questions about Stripe, how we're doing different things. So when you need accountability and back and forth among your colleagues, use Spoke, even in the engineering team, but you shouldn't I would not recommend using Spoke to actually track tasks and engineering tasks and bugs. All right, so with the last few minutes, and I appreciate everyone's patience, I want to quickly just talk about one or two others, take you through one or two other slides. So I briefly hit on analytics. Bottom line, lots of great analytics in the product, and most importantly, customizable for you. But as most of our customers will attest to you, one of the cool things about Spoke is the rate at which we ship features. We are constantly pushing the envelope on two different axes. One is adding more and more richer ticketing features, and on the other axis, adding more and more cross-team workflow capabilities. And so for our 2019 roadmap, there are basically three things. More richness around how you manage and triage requests, providing more personalized employee self-service, and enabling workflows and integrations. And just to show you specifically what it looks like, right now, tasks and approvals are in beta. They're going out live soon. Analytics in the product is live or will be live very shortly. We have a bunch of privacy settings. In June, we're going to be adding labels so you can automatically label things as they come into Spoke. We're going to allow you to have different ticket statuses, pending, resolved, open, etc. And very importantly, we're going to start building out our first integrations, specifically a project management integration, an asset tracking integration, and more knowledge bases. After that, Spoke is going to automatically figure out the best SLA for different types of requests. We're going to allow you to customize the inbox features, the inbox that you see. So if you want, for example, all tickets about a certain topic from a certain person at the top of your list, you'll be actually able to customize that in Spoke. We'll also provide a better experience for requesters to see all their tickets. And then what we're super excited about after all that is workflows in Spoke, where something like onboarding will literally involve 20 people and you can track it all in one place with an audit trail. Super convenient. Some folks can respond in Slack. The power users can be in Spoke, etc. So that's our very, very quick roadmap that I just wanted to share. The last slides I want to talk about, we love our customers. We have a lot of excellent companies using us. And I would say the common characteristic to all the logos that you see here among the hundreds that we have, one, they care deeply about end user experience within their organizations. They are saying, look, if my colleagues want to ping me on Slack, if my colleagues want to help themselves, I need to enable that. That's number one. Two, they are very focused on stepping out of their roles in IT or HR operations and actually seeing how an entire company and different functions in the company can work together, which is why they're so excited about the cross-team capabilities. And then finally, it so happens a lot of these companies are also growing really fast. And again, when you're like being bombarded constantly by all these requests, you need time back. 80% of our requests are automatically resolved. You spend 80% less time per ticket because of how quickly we allow you to collaborate with your colleagues, the web app speed, etc. Up to 50% of requests will be auto-resolved. And Spoke, when something is not auto-resolved, Spoke knows how to triage it. The last point that I will make is about our customer success team. We recognize that you need to be set up for success when using Spoke. So with any Spoke subscription, we provide a free customer success process that does two things for you. One, it helps you set up your trial to make sure that it works out well, and then we provide you ongoing support after the trial as well. And here's just a sort of quick list of some of the things that we do. During your trial, we guide you on how to set up your knowledge base. We guide you on how to add stuff. We know sometimes you need almost a project plan and change management and communication to roll out a tool like Spoke in your organization. We will spend as much time as required making sure you're comfortable using the product. And having done this hundreds of times now, we are very good at suggesting best practices on launching. But we're not just about launching the product, we're about consistently adding value as well. And so once a month, we'll give you the reports that you should create in your knowledge base. We'll do quarterly health checks, keep training you, and sort of providing sort of excellent customer success as part of the whole Spoke process. So thank you so much for your time and your patience. What's next? Two things. We would love to sort of discuss and provide a customized demo for you to better understand your use case. We're going to be sending a note right after this with, not right after this, soon today, with the deck, the video, as well as the ability for you to jump on another demo, which is just customized for you. And also, please, my email is j@atSpoke.com. I would love to hear from you and answer any questions that you have. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you on Spoke soon. Thank you.